Well, if you're watching this video, I'm sure it's because you are a beginner pressure canner. Maybe you've never pressure canned before, or you just want to get some tips. But you're at the right place. Now, I've talked to people that have gotten the gift of a pressure canner and it's still in a box a year later because they're scared. They're afraid of pressure canning. They don't want the thing to explode in their kitchen, right? Or to poison their whole family with botulism if they do it wrong. But the honest truth is, it's really easy to do. As long as you follow the steps, anybody can do it. Just trust me on that. So our first step, read the manual carefully that came with your pressure canner. And I suggest reading it 2 or 3 times, maybe highlighting, maybe making some notes. This manual that comes with your pressure canner tells you exactly what to do with your pressure canner and your model. Now what you're going to be seeing today, I'm using an All-American canner, but you might have a Presto or a different model. So in that case, always do what your manual recommends. But the steps are going to be the same. So even if you don't have an All-American canner, come along and pressure can with me. Just like anything you do, you need the right tools for the job, and pressure canning is no different. If you already water bath can, then you're familiar with most of these tools. Of course, you need your canning jars, and they should be clean, but they do not have to be sterilized. You need the lids, right? This is what you're going to put on the jars to seal them. These are something you use once, and when you use the product, you throw these away. And these are rings, and this is what we screw on to keep the lid in place when we're canning. These you can use multiple times. This is something that I really think is kind of mandatory. I suppose you could do it with rags or whatever, but these jars can be very hot. So this is a jar lifter, and you would be lifting it like this. I really think this tool comes in handy. Now you're also going to want one of these because you're going to need to be dipping stuff from your pan into your jars, and a ladle comes in really handy. This is a magnetic lid lifter, which see, works really well. Now that you don't have to really put these in hot water, you may get along without having one of these. And then this is, it's called the bubble tool, I believe. This is something that you're going to put in your jar and get out any air bubbles. And then at this end, it has so you can measure what your head space is. To be honest, I rarely use this tool. I have found a chopstick is much better for me for doing the air spaces. One other thing is you're going to want some dry toweling, and I always have a little vinegar here that I can dip the toweling into and rub the rims when it comes time to seal them. And you may want a ruler to actually measure your head space. That's completely up to you. But really, this is all you need, in addition, of course, to your pressure canner. Well, you need a recipe, right? Maybe you're just packing meat into the jars, or maybe you're making soup or stew. But you should follow USDA directions. Now, there is a free resource right here. It is called The Complete Guide to Home Canning, Guide 5, Preparing and Canning Poultry, Red Meats, and Seafoods. And it goes over, game, as well as beef and pork and things of that nature. So this is free. You can get it here. And I'll also put the link down below this video so you can just click on it and go there and print it. It's a great resource to have, and this tells you what the USDA considers safe practices for canning meat, poultry, and seafood. Maybe you want a stew recipe or a soup recipe. Well, then get a guide like this. This is the all new Ball book of canning and preserving, and it's great. It has a lot of water bath canning and preserving ideas, but it does have some information and recipes for pressure canning also. And just a little note, be really careful when you go to various sites. You might see people who can butter, who can milk, who can bacon. I have to admit, I can bacon, but I'm going to warn you here, those type of things are not USDA approved. So you're taking a chance. And I suggest that you follow the USDA guidelines for your family. It's just safer. You need to fill up your canner with the amount of water that your manual says. In my case, it's 1.5 inches, so I have my little ruler in, so you can see. And I'm putting in just a splash of vinegar. You want to have about a tablespoon, and this helps so your glass jars don't get all cloudy. Can you see that? This was obviously a time when I forgot to put the vinegar in my water, and then you get jars like that. Does it hurt anything? No, it's just mineral buildup, and we do live on a well, so we might have a little more mineral buildup than those on city water. But if you want your jars always to look nice and pretty, and you live in and have well water, just add a dab of vinegar every time to your pressure canner water. You want to place your metal tray on the bottom. So if your jars are resting just on the bottom of your pressure canner, they may get too hot and then crack and release all their contents into your pressure canner. And you're going to have to clean up broken glass. So always put the tray below so that won't happen to you. And you see your rim around here? You can see it's gotten a bit dirty, hasn't it? And maybe my next video will be how to clean your pressure canner. But you want to make sure you keep this oiled. I'm just using a little olive oil on the tray. Just putting it around. And you could use Vaseline also. Just anything to give it a little bit of an oil, because you don't want your pressure canner stuck. For good measure, you can also put it a little bit around your rim here, just to be safe. Now we're going to go through the process of filling our jars. In this case, I'm filling it with a stuffed pepper soup, so it's going to be hot liquid, but it could be cold liquid. And you're going to need your funnel and your lids and your rings. So let's get started. On another channel I saw a good hint, which is so you don't do a mess, because when you're ladling back and forth you can drop some of your liquid. She puts her jars in a bowl, and that way if there's any liquid it's contained there. So we're just going to ladle up some of the soup. And when you're doing something like soup, you want to make sure that it isn't too full with the meat and the veggies. You want to make sure you get your broth in there too. And in this case, we want about 1 inch of headspace, so that's good. Now, you might be asking, what's headspace? Okay, headspace is a space between the bottom of your lid here and the liquid. And some recipes will say 1 inch, 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch. You may want to measure your headspace for whatever your recipe calls for. And why is it important? Well, if you don't have enough headspace, the liquid can go over in the lid and you could have a false seal, but you could also have a mess. And if you have too much headspace, there might be more air in there than the time it takes to actually pressure can it and push all that air out, and so you've underprocessed it time-wise. So pay attention to headspace. So we've got our jars filled up nice. Then you can use that bubble tool, or in my case, I like this, and you just want to make sure there's no air bubbles in here. You're just going to do that to all of your jars. There we go. Now we know there's no air bubbles. I usually use a little bit of vinegar and dab toweling on it. And then I wipe the rims. You just want to make sure that there isn't any residue on them, especially fat, which I think is why I use the vinegar, because it takes that off. You want to have a good seal, so it's really important to wipe your rim, but you can use just water, just a moistened towel. Now it's time to put on your lid. That's it. And then you're going to put on your ring. Put that on. Oh, these jars are hot. I'm going to do this. These are hot. And you just finger tighten them. And what does finger tighten mean? You don't need any special tool, just as tight as you can. The object is to just keep the lid on during the canning process. I'll be back when I finish these. So in my case, you want to keep this as straight as possible, but I have a vent up here, so I have to just slightly tilt it. The reason you don't want to tilt it is you don't want to get the liquid onto the lid. Now I have all my lids in there. If I had more jars to can, I'd be putting this on top, and then I put more jars in the canner. But I'm not doing a double-decker today. Now you might notice that the water is hot. It's not quite boiling, but it's hot because I'm hot packing. The liquid is hot, so I've made sure the water is hot in my canner. I don't want to bring it up to a boil for too long, because then it might shrink down past my 1.5 inches of water level that I need to properly pressure can. Now, you might have gotten a tool with your pressure canner. I, of course, lost it. So I'm repurposing a paper clip, and I'm just putting it in right here. You can see it go all the way in. And on the other side, you see it right here. This way I know that my vent is clear. Very, very important for your pressure canner. You can also do a visual where you look into it and you can see the light coming through that hole, but I prefer to do this. But always check that vent hole. Now on my pressure canner, it has a little indentation right here, and that helps me line up my lid. And this is an American pressure canner, or all-American I should say. They're expensive, but I think they're well worth the price. They're just incredibly, incredibly well made. They're made right here in the good USA in Wisconsin, I believe. So it's now lined up. I'm going to take it from 2 different sides. And just tighten these. And I'm going to do that all the way around. Okay, then I actually tighten it up. I want to make sure I get it on even first. So that's why you do one on either side, so you can get your lid on even. Now my lid is nice and secure. So we're going to wait right now until steam comes continuously out here. So we'll be back when the steam starts. Here you can see, and maybe you can even hear, there's a lot of steam coming out right here. We want this steam to be coming out for 10 minutes. And then we'll do the next step. Now it's important to let this air out, do it for your full 10 minutes, because you want to get the air out of your pressure canner. If you look at your gauge, you notice that it says 5, 10, 15. What does that mean? Well, it's different weights. And you have to use the weight that your recipe says based on where you're located, how far below or above sea level you are. How do you find that out? The easiest way is to Google it. Okay, Google, what's the sea level for, let's say, Colorado Springs, Colorado?
Colorado Springs elevation is 6,035 feet.
Okay, that's definitely above sea level. So they're probably going to be using this 15-pound pressure. Now I'm below 700, so I am below sea level, and I only use the 10-pound pressure. The reason being is when you get above sea level to a certain elevation, water boils at, let's say, even 204 degrees rather than the 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So you have to make sure you use the right pressure weight for your elevation. Okay, Google, stop timer. Now it's time. I'm putting it on at the 10-pound weight. There, it's on. Now we have to wait for this gauge, in my case, to come up to the 10-pound pressure. Okay, can you hear it doing its little jig? And over here, you'll see it's at 10-pound pressure. Now it should do this little dance, jiggle, about 3 times per minute. If it's doing it continuously, you have it on too high a heat. But now we know everything's okay. My processing time is 75 minutes. So I'm setting the timer for 75 minutes, and we'll be back when that's done. Now, you want to watch that gauge because you want to keep it at or above, in my case, the 10-pound pressure needed. And you want it to be pretty consistent, so you don't want to be going up and down, because that can cause liquid from your jars to leak. Now, if all of a sudden you notice, oh my gosh, it took a big dip, what am I going to do? The best thing is to start over. If you had to do this for 75 minutes, start the process over for 75 minutes. You always want to be safe. A good safety measure is don't leave your pressure canner alone. It gets lonely. It wants companionship. So make sure you stay in the kitchen and listen. Is it making that jiggling sound you want to hear? Is everything right? Don't go out and do yard work the entire time you're pressure canning. It's really a great time to maybe clean your refrigerator, something I'm planning on doing today while I'm canning. Okay, our 75 minutes is up, so I'm turning it off. And now we have to wait until this gauge gets down to 0. Now you need to be patient with this little gauge to come down to 0. It can take 30 to 45 minutes. So be sure to plan your time accordingly. Now is the time, if you're using an electric cooktop, that you have to lift up your canner and take it off the burner. You don't have to do that if you're using a gas or propane cooktop. Okay, your gauge is down below 0. You can now take off your weight. And you can still hear a little steam escaping. I think I just heard a pop of another pop. Toucan sealing. You've taken off your weight, but now you still have to wait another 10 minutes before you can open the lid. Okay, first off, we're going to undo all the clamps here. Now we're going to lift it up and do it away from us. Can you see all that steam still coming out? Want to be careful. Now we're going to take out one jar at a time. Lift straight up, let it drain a bit, and then take it over. And we'll do that with all of our jars. Now we've got our jars here. Put them in a little padding here on our counter. And we're just not going to touch them. We're just going to leave them alone for 12 to 24 hours. It's been 24 hours. And so now I'm checking the seal. And you can do that 3 different ways on your cans. My case is usually just by looking at it, you can see the indentation. It goes a little concave. You can also feel it. But now if you would push on it, then it would bing down. That means you didn't have a good seal, even though it looks like it's sealed down. You can also use the spoon method, which is just hitting the back of your spoon on the various jars. And if it has a different sound, you know that there's something wrong with that one. But you want to have a good seal. And if you can see, I'm just holding that by the seal itself. So, excellent seal. Just make sure your jars are really sealed. So we're going to take off the rings. And remember, you can just wash these and reuse them. And you want to put on what it is, which is this case, it's stuffed. Oh, I got an awful thick marker here. Pepper soup. That's better. And it's 12, 18. You always want to make sure to label all of your jars because you might think you know what it is, but you know what? That could look like chili too. So be sure to label your jars and with the date so you know when to rotate your stock. So you thought you were done, but you're not. There's one final step because you've done everything if you followed this tutorial. And now you have sealed jars, a successful canning, and you know what you need to do now? Pat yourself on the back because you did a great job and it wasn't that hard, was it? You just follow these steps every time and you will end up with great canned products and whole shelves full of your pressure canning goods. And if you have any questions about pressure canning, just post them down below. I'd be glad to help you. This is Potpourri saying I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and as always, please subscribe and share the knowledge and thumbs up if you like this video. Thank you.